I'd like to share an experience I had with the game Team Fortress 2. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday, I think about maybe 2 weeks ago, and I had decided to play a multiplayer match of Team Fortress 2. I signed in, and I started up the automatic server selection for play modes. I felt like playing Capture the Flag, so I selected that option. My computer lagged a bit, after all, it was a Source Engine game, but eventually I found one. I've only been playing Team Fortress 2 since a little after it became free. I don't have a very big server history, nor any experience with server mods or just servers in general, but something seemed rather odd or off about this particular server. Once I gained access to the server and a loading screen came up, the bar on the bottom right started to jitter around. It was at 70%, paused, and then started back at 45%, and then kept on flickering between 45 and 60%. I waited for maybe 15 seconds before I decided to say, screw this, quit out the game, and I want to get something to eat. The game started up, and I decided to play for my server history, and I noticed a new server was added to my list. TF Playdead 905, or something along that line. After the events of what I'm about to explain, the server disappeared from my list, so I plan on going from memory here. I tried the server, and similar to before, the load bar jittered a bit. However, I managed to get it to complete this time, and it didn't really take as long as it did before, so I'm quite glad. Maybe it was downloading assets or something. Usually when you enter a custom server, there will be some sort of splash page to welcome you to the server and advertise their site briefly and how you should totally give them some money because the server is totally super rad. In the case of this server, the entire splash page was black. There was nothing on it. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card with all the strange things that were happening in TF2 at that time, but I decided to ignore it and continue onward. The game loaded, and I selected the Pyro as my class, and I entered 2 Fort. For those of you who have never played a game of Team Fortress 2, here's my brief explanation. It's a team-based online multiplayer game, and in this particular Capture the Flag mode map of Team Fortress 2, the map was 2 Fort. On this map, you have 2 fairly large mills separated by a lagoon and a bridge, and an underground network of pipes that you can enter. The objective is to, obviously, capture the opponent's flag and return to your base, but for this server, there were 2 teams of 6 upon joining, and as soon as I joined it, both teams became full. Perhaps they were using bots of some sort. The game was already in mid-progress, and everything was working normally. Our team, Blue, had scored 1 point, and we needed 2 more to win the game. The red team had scored 0 points at this point in the game. This particular game didn't have a time limit of any kind, and we seemed to be going back and forth for about 14 minutes with little to no progress. Occasionally, members from our team would type angry messages to the opposing team, accusing them of being cheap or, something like that, because they have 4 engineers on the fucking flag with turrets, making it almost impossible to make it to the flag, and making the game seem endless, which, as you all know, if you get a few spies in the mix, you could easily disable some of them. Up until now, things have been relatively normal. Until I started noticing that for about 5 minutes, I've been going around a level, and I had not seen a single one of my team members, nor any other players from the other team. People were still talking, however, it kind of took a little while for that to sink in that I had not seen anyone in the server for about 5 minutes. I thought that I had some sort of lag problem, so I asked the other players if they were having the same issue, and the general response was, nope. But one other player said that they hadn't seen me for a little bit either. About 6 more minutes passed, and I started to grow pretty bored. All I could find were those pesky little turrets that kept on killing me, but no damn players. I decided to make one more round throughout the level before I just simply leave and find another server, abandoning this pointless game because, fuck it, I have better things to do. I left our fort, fell into the lagoon in the middle, and proceeded to enter the red team's pipe network. After the little room underground in the middle of the tunnel, there was a really long pipe that started to lead to a staircase that led up into the basement level at the end. I noticed an enemy scout was standing there, but nothing was moving. He wasn't moving, at least. Just standing there, with his bat out, staring at me. A strange form of relief swept over me as I started to work again, and I charged at him and begun to shoot at him with my flare gun. After all, these scout types seem to die fairly easily once you introduce the concept of fire. The shots went right through him, and when I approached, he disappeared completely. Really bad lag. Well, this is fucking stupid, I would think to myself. I ascended the staircase, and as I entered a base, a strange static sound started to replace the other game sounds. I made my way through the base as I got closer to the flag room, and the sound started to get louder and louder until I couldn't hear anything else in the game at all but this odd staticky thing. That's when things started to get really weird, and when I mean really weird, I mean pretty damn weird. I asked if anyone else had heard the static, and I did not receive any reply, unlike before. No one has said a single word since I saw the enemy scout in the pipe tunnel. I managed to get to the room adjacent to the flag room, with 2 halls going into it, and I could hear some sort of murmuring behind the static. That was really strange, and to be honest, a little discomforting as I continued. As I went down one of the halls and turned a corner, I noticed that there was simply no flag room. It was just plain black, like the hall that loaded into the game's void. Or at least, all the textures and lighting were reduced to 100% black. I shot a couple of times, and my bullets landed as though there were walls there. I entered the room anyway. I saw a flag and picked it up. And then I turned around to leave, and then I noticed that there was no hulls. Everything was just fucking black. The UI was still up and everything on the screen, but it was completely black. I tried to get an answer after explaining my problem, and again, I got no response. I stood in the room, or lack thereof, for about, I'd have to say, a minute, maybe 2, until suddenly the game froze, and the game ended. But the message didn't say anyone won or lost, and the announcer's voice was rather distorted. The scoreboard was broken, and a loading screen quickly came up, and it said, "Downloading Play Dead 0090," or something along those lines. It took about maybe 17 minutes or so to download. It was a really big file. When it was all finished, the black server screen came up again. I went through the screens and selected Spy. The level loaded to something completely indescribable. I tried to save a screenshot, but every picture I tried to screenshot afterwards came up as an error, and print screen simply didn't work. The level looked rather black and white and very glitchy. All the textures on the walls looked like some sort of 8-bit block, and it was just really distorted, as though I could barely even run the game on my machine. It was almost like playing the 3D version of Static Snow. There's the static shit that you get on your screen when you don't have anything plugged into the video port, or anything in the audio ports either. I then typed into the chat, "What is this map?" But there was simply no response. I checked the player list. Other than my name, everyone was listed as I am dead 1, I am dead 2, I am dead 3. This was completely possible. I know a lot of you listening to my story may be thinking, fuck this guy, he's weird, and diabetic, and a terrible person. But if you really think about it at this point, nothing I've said seems to be too out of the realms of reality. It's quite possible that someone put bots on the server, and it's quite possible that maybe my computer glitched up, or maybe there was something with the server that was more different than your typical game. I mean, it's quite easy to put some sort of coding in there that can enact some sort of effect that I'm describing. So before you people in the comment section tell me that I am completely full of shit, I'd like to remind you that everything I am describing It's within the realms of possibility. However, to your credit, disgruntled commenter, I've never encountered anything like this before in any other types of games. Rather it was made for fun, or for getting pranked, bro, or just for hacks along the lines of the Majora Mask ones. But this is an online game with what I thought secure servers. Perhaps Valve Guard let down their guard. I don't know. I decided to give it a few more minutes, explore the level, as it was a fairly large maze of odd, weird, and just downright confusing tunnels. So there were no sound effects whatsoever at this point. Nothing I did caused a sound, and eventually I came to a really long tunnel with what I imagined to be in the middle of the level. The tunnel had turned into darkness at the end, and it seemed to be almost endless. I was walking for at least a minute in one direction. But really, there was a reason why I continued. Of course, I try to keep YouTube on in the background, but something about this just made me want to explore. I mean, put yourself in my shoes, guys. Weird mumbling and staticky things are happening. People who used to talk just stopped. And now you're in this weird map that did not seem lazy, mind you. But rather, it just seemed intriguing. As though there was something behind it, and maybe there was a jump scare akin to one of PewDiePie's videos, or something along those lines. And I was gonna experience that for myself. There was something atmospheric about it. However, no matter how much atmosphere you got, or really any intrigue in the player itself, running at least a minute in one direction with no change in scenery, texture, or anything like that can lose an audience. And that's when I decided to turn around and maybe see if there was something else. Maybe my graphics card was on the fritz again. After all, I did have a shit laptop. And the moment I turned my camera around, I saw an enemy scout I saw earlier, except something was very wrong with it. His eyes were black, and his left arm is rather deformed. It was bent in impossible directions, and his legs reminded me of a crab. Almost like one of those Manslayer videos you might see. I'm actually a big fan of them. And after you've seen absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing for a solid several minutes, and then that just appears, no matter how goofy it may look upon realizing it, the jump scare almost made me jump out of my seat, and I quickly typed, "What the fuck is going on?" And I did so in a hurried manner in the chat log. However, there was simply no response. I stood there, and I stared down at this strange-looking scout, and after a few more moments, the other players started to talk, but it all appeared in very corrupted and garbage text. The scout quickly approached me in a sudden, though irregular fashion, and I heard a very loud burst of static, and all of a sudden it kicked me out of the server. I went to go check, but the server was gone from my history. Naturally, I just decided to shut off the game, and for now, I actually haven't played it since then. I think it was some sort of hacked game or something. But nonetheless, it was creepy, and to you mod authors, I have to let you know, you've done a great job. Update. July 13th, 2011. After posting this, I decided to play a game again. I went to my server history to find a King of the Hill map, but I noticed that CTF, Playdead 905 was back. But this time it had 0 out of 16 players. I went to the server, and unlike before, it loaded normally without any issues. It was 2 for it, like the one I entered before, but there were no other players on the server. Nothing seemed really out of place, but I walked around the map for a while, finding nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing. The only thing I noticed that was strange is I would hear sound effects, something glitching out every now and again. When selecting a character, there was a static noise that kept repeating, and when I went into the tunnel area, I heard footsteps. I decided to shut down the game a few minutes later, and I'll try it again in our time. maybe this time I'll be able to get some footage. However, as of now, I'm a little creeped out. Thanks for listening to my ramblings. The following story was written by a YouTube user known as Blue Falcon. He seems to be a pretty decent author, and this is actually under the Suggested Readings tab on the Creepypasta wiki, and not from the ever-popular Some Ordinary Gamers wiki. There is some rather interesting ideas, and although I felt the story was a little generic at times, it did leave me with enough room to interject my own twist on things. It allowed me to play a character, and it allowed me to build up a character. Even though, in general, the character itself in the normal story isn't built up, and he really focuses on the intricacies of the mod itself. He never describes anything too out of place, but I felt it could be better. But it seems to be a prologue for another story. So, Blue Falcon, if you're a fan of my channel, I'd like to say thank you for writing this. You did a fantastic job. If you're not a fan of this, people who enjoy my channel and are listening to this for some weird reason, because I know a lot of you don't like my reviews, you can find his actual full story in the description, as always. I like to credit the authors, and this guy did a fantastic job. The only thing I would recommend is just making it seem a little less generic. If you make it too extravagant, for example, blocks that kill people, then you run the risk of making no one take you seriously. But if you make it too in the ordinary, and there's nothing that really takes you out of it, or there isn't some slow build-up to something grandiose, then it just seems like a story, and not a very good one at that. I just wish that there was a little bit of an impacting punch at the end of this. But, alas, there was not, and I can deal with it. Thanks for listening, and remember, you guys are awesome. I got a few top lists I'm actually working on. If you guys are interested in the future, I'll actually have them linked on this. But currently I'm working on the worst YouTubers list with Blame It on George. We've been really wanting to do it, and trust me, we got some pretty interesting things. We are also working on another list that I think you guys might like. Now, I know I normally don't do games on this channel, but we decided to do the most fucked up games you can find. And if you would like to suggest a game, I would like you to see if you can do so in the comment section. Or maybe you can suggest a terrible YouTuber isn't fucking PewDiePie. Thanks for listening. This is your host, That Creepy Reading, signing off.